those are all great points. So I appreciate everyone's feedback there. To keep things moving along, I mean, we could talk about COVID for another half hour if you let us, but if you haven't been living under a rock for the last couple of years in the Magento world, you know that in June of 2020, Magento 1 will reach its end of life, and Adobe will no longer be offering support, offer any active Magento 1 users. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. A lot of our clients are asking us questions. We've gotten a lot of questions over the last year. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, what to expect and what you should plan for when Adobe shuts down and ends the support life for Magento 1. So I'll kick it over to Ian and let him dive in.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, certainly not new news that Magento 1 is, going away here, at least from the eyes of Adobe. But Magento 1 was a really successful platform. It really was the leader in a good portion of the e-commerce boom in the last decade. Just thousands and hundreds of thousands of merchants on it still today. Haven't seen the latest count, but there's still quite a few merchants that are still on the Magento 1 platform. I know that a lot of the challenge has been, depending on when you invested in your e-commerce platform or your site, that's a lot of times creates a lot of heartburn, right? Like if you built your new site a couple of years ago and now you're already looking at replatforming and getting off of Magento 1, that's not necessarily a great thing, but it's a reality of being in technology and being in e-commerce. Is it's fast moving and you have to adapt to that. So with Magento 2, the upgrade from Magento 1 to Magento 2 is not necessarily just an upgrade, so to speak. It really is a rebuild. And I think that's why we've seen, some laggers out there as far as businesses are still yet on Magento 1. So with that end of life coming up here, which is the end of June here, we really only have a couple more months until the support is cut off. So what does that look like? Your site will still run. Things won't just go dark when that happens. But really what you're looking at is not having Adobe's support, whether you're on the paid enterprise edition of Magento 1 or open source. There's going to be no support going forward. That means no incremental updates, certainly no features. I think most importantly, what we want to talk about today is no security patches. So, if there is some sort of security issue with Magento 1, some sort of, kind of critical weakness or something like that that's identified, not be able to rely on Magento or Adobe to release a fix for that. There's obviously a very big community around Magento, so I would anticipate that at some point, if there was a vulnerability found in Magento 1 code base, that community probably would develop something and make that available open source. But nobody really knows what would that time frame look like. Who would be spearheading that? So I think it's just important to certainly at this time have a plan to get off of Magento 1. Because security aside, all of e-commerce, not just in the Magento ecosystem, but e-commerce as a whole is moving forward. So by being on Magento 1, you're not going to be certainly pushing the envelope, nor keeping up with the trends and the latest technology in e-commerce. So if you're really serious about it and growing your e-commerce business, you need to have a strategy and thinking about how you're moving your technology, your platform forward. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. I don't know, Rob, maybe if you got something more to add to that.
Yeah, so I think one of an interesting standpoint of this too is you're not getting new developers coming into Magento 1. So these developers are now more senior developers. They're going on to greener pastures. They're wanting to work in Magento 2. So maybe it's not immediate now, but here soon, maybe I haven't upgraded because of cost. Well, guess what? The development, the cost of that, it's going to cost people more because now these are senior developers. to even get in here and work on this. So your cost per hour, it can only go up. Would be sort of my understanding, you know, too. And there's also supply and demand. There's not going to be a huge supply anymore.
No, that's an excellent point. I mean, I know for a fact, you know, Magento developers, certainly senior developers, don't want to work in Magento 1. I mean, that's just the technology world, right? You know, senior developers, you know, are want to be continuing to learn. They want to be working on the latest, greatest stuff. And Magento 1 is by no means that. So, you know, it's just a reality of the ecosystem of the community. So yet another reason, you know, to be looking at moving off, because you want to be where that community is vibrant, where there's, you know, the focus, where the development is happening. I think another thing to think about here, you know, a lot of merchants that are on Magento 1, you know, especially at this point, I think maybe smaller. They might have a smaller e-commerce business and are still developing that. And really asking the question, you know, is Magento or Magento 2 specifically the right platform for them? And it's not a simple yes, right? That there's definitely some decisions to be made. There's, you know, I think this is a good opportunity to look at your business, look at what your roadmap is before you talk about technology. Understand, you know, where your business is at, where you want to take your e-commerce business, and what do you need to make that successful. And then from there, look at the technologies, you know, the e-commerce platforms and things around that you need to support your goals. It's not just automatic, hey, I need to go to this platform. Why do you need to go to this platform? Magento has a lot of advantages, extremely powerful platform, but it doesn't make sense for everybody. Right? For a really simple online e-commerce business with, you know, limited need for, you know, customizing a highly tailored experience for customers, maybe doesn't need to go, you know, all the way to Magento 2, or certainly not to Magento Commerce. And that's something that I know at, you know, Swarming, we really strive to, like, you know, help customers pick, you know, the right platform and go in the right direction. It's not just an automatic upgrade.
Yep. And we've had a lot of conversations with prospects and clients around this. And, you know, what Magento started, it was before I was in e-commerce, but it was an open source platform mainly. And it was pretty cost effective to get into. But as over the years, as it's advanced and it's gotten bigger, it's not for necessarily always small businesses. So somebody who could have originally been on Magento 1 and got on there kind of cheap, they may be thinking, hey, I just need to stay on Magento because I'm on Magento, but that's not the case. You know, you really got to think through and find out what's the right price point for you, but also what your business demands, like I said. And that's really key.
Yeah, overall, you know, Magento 2 is just a different beast than Magento 1. In Magento 1, from a technical standpoint, it was limited itself a lot more to just kind of your, you know, kind of hacker developer to come in and build out, you know, some quote unquote features, you know, that worked well enough to get by. But Magento 2 is really built more for, like, you know, enterprise level, like really being able to scale for the needs of bigger e-commerce businesses. So it just requires a different level of talent, I think, you know, to be able to develop a quality and proper e-commerce site. So that's not a bad thing. You know, it's really important to have the quality and ability for your platform to upgrade, be able to upgrade and you know, take enhancements without it turning into a big rat nest of code.
So if you guys can, you know, quickly summarize, you know, if you're a business owner right now running a Magento 1 site and you haven't taken any steps to start upgrading, you know, first of all, what would you guys recommend? You know, what are those first steps you would recommend them taking? And two, you know, what's going to happen to their site in June? Is it going to crash? Is it going to get hacked? You know, speak to those business owners who are, you know, like me, a marketing guy who's like, oh, what's going to happen here?
Sure.
It won't get hacked in June. Maybe August.
But that's not something that we can promise or guarantee. So I'd say the first big step is talking to your partner, your provider, whoever is kind of owning your e-commerce, and better understanding if the payment implementations within your Magento 1 is being maintained in a secure manner, and the type of payment implementations that you have is minimizing your liability as a business. To Rob's, point and joke, like, we can't promise that it won't be hacked in June. But at the same point, it's going to be ending security support, and it's going to be out to a community of people who are going to be volunteering to be making security improvements to a code base. So you need to do everything that you can to help ensure that customer critical data, meaning addresses, emails, passwords, credit card information if you're collecting credit cards, is all being handled and maintained in a way that's not going to come back and blow up on you as a business and put your business in jeopardy in the event that someone does unfortunately get access to data. The other thing when talking about payments that we've started to see, and we even on ourselves have a to-do list here of going through and validating against popular payment gateways, but we've started to see some gateways slash payment providers start to note that they're putting deadlines on their own services and supporting transactions and authorizations coming from Magento. So though you might want to stay on Magento 1 through June, and you want to continue to take orders for credit card payments, the provider that you're using to check credit cards and authorize payments might end their support for data to be coming through from your Magento 1 store at a different date. So that's going to be some key stuff in terms of payments. Rob, what do you want to add on payments?
Well, I was about to say, even with regards to payment, so they're going to, some of the payment processors are going to disregard it. But before long, it's only going to be, okay, I can use Magento 1 if I'm in a third world country with Bitcoin as my main payment. It's just going to get to that point. But I mean, you've got states inside the United States with CCPA, and then with the EU with GDPR, they're now legislating that a site should be so compliant, right? And it's only going to get worse. And so with that being the case, I mean, you almost, you need to be looking at the options that are out there. And there are, Magento's throwing some options out there. I was just made aware of Braintree, PayPal are offering in some, sort of even loan programs and things like that, where part of your payment, your processor fees are going towards paying off your loan, your low interest loan for the migration. Now, I'm not advocating getting a loan to buy the new site, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people there that are deciding, hey, it's in our best interest to get people out of Magento 1, to the point where even I'm willing to not make as much margin off these transactions just to get you off of Magento 1. And so, follow the dollars. They're the writing's on the wall.
I want to circle back on, just so you guys can give a little bit more. I'm going to play the non-technical guy here. So Nick, you mentioned payment processors and secure payment processors. If I have an e-commerce site, what am I looking at to find out if my payments are secure versus non-secure? Like, how do I know?
Sure. One of the things is Magento 1 used to allow you just to take credit cards, and it would store that credit card information within your Magento system. That's a really big no-no nowadays. Basically, if someone were to get into your Magento system, they would have access to unsecure, stored customer credit cards, which puts you in really big legal problems, as well as tarnishing the brand and the reputation that your company has worked to build. One of the biggest things that you can do is, again, reaching out to your partner if you have one, or starting to do some research in finding out if this new way of handling stuff with payment processors, which is called tokenization, what it means is that in sort of keeping the customer's name, credit card number, verification number, and expiration date, and you're keeping all that stuff in your system, what ends up happening is all of that is submitted into your payment processor, and they end up giving you a unique token that represents and matches with that card. And then that is what's stored and saved within your e-commerce system. So that way, if something were to, worst case, ever happen, that token can only be used with your payment processor. And if a hacker were to get into your site, they can't really do much with that token. They don't all of a sudden have a treasure trove of credit card information and start running up bills on Amazon and any other website that they wanted to start doing random malicious purchasing on. And then lastly, the next other step, which is one of the things that we always try to ensure and that we're going to be making sure is implemented for our customers that might still be entertaining the idea of staying on Magento 1, is making sure that they're using a payment method that's hosted. So what that means is on your website during your checkout, you'll have your checkout forms. You'll have the form where a user can go in and put in their credit card and payment information. A lot of the old Magento 1 out-of-box implementations, that credit card form, even if it might be doing a token integration, that actual credit card form where the user is putting in their credit card information might still actually be served by your Magento server. And thus, credit card information that's entered by the user is still passing through your website and your systems. So one of the things that we really like to recommend is customers use payment methods that are known as hosted. So that way, that little credit card form that's presented to the user isn't even on your site, well, isn't on your server. So any information and critical sensitive information that's being entered by a user is completely with that payment vendor and is minimizing the liability that is resolving around having credit card information, critical customer information flowing through your website.
Keyword there being minimizing.
Yep.
Ultimately, it's still the business's responsibility, and that's something that, I mean, you think of it as your e-commerce site is a store. So think about if you're renting a storefront. You can have your store, you can have all your products in that store. You can hire a company to come in and put cameras, put in a security system. But if your store gets robbed, you don't sue the security system company. Then it's still on you. You're still the one that's going to be taking it on the chin. So, but the more you put into there, the more work and more effort that you put, and the more precautions you put in, the less likely that risk.
I'm going to go ahead and throw the flag and say that we shouldn't use the term robbed for the remainder of this podcast.
One other kind of side note too, part of the issue with supporting a legacy platform like Magento 1 is that, Magento, depends on other technologies as well, some of which are now legacy. So, for example, Magento 1 and all Magento platforms run on PHP. And, Magento 1, unless you're running the enterprise version, the latest version that it supports is PHP 5.6, which is also no longer supported nor has security patches. And even the enterprise edition, which has support for up to PHP 7.2, that is going to have its support and security patch end of life. And I think it's the end of this year, sometime around the end of this year. So does this, I think it's kind of, without debate that from a technical standpoint, you need to be thinking about transitioning off of Magento 1. It's just not a long-term viable option, right? So I think kind of, Ben, you had brought up the point, like, okay, so as a business, how do you, what are the next steps? What do you need to be looking at doing, right? So if you haven't already, you need to be going through that process of looking at what a migration looks like, with your existing partner or with a partner that can work with you on the implementation of your e-commerce, new e-commerce store, because this really is a rebuild. It's not a simple upgrade. And as I earlier too, you need to evaluate what does your business look like, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, like what does that look like? And that will help guide you not only in platform selection, but use this as an opportunity. Right? This is an opportunity to learn from maybe what worked well and what didn't work well in your existing Magento 1 site, right? Because you can now kind of refactor things, rebuild things, maybe rethink something assumption you had made before. It kind of worked, but you had maybe some technical debt or some things that your developers are saying, oh, we can't do that, or that's going to be costly. There may be features or other aspects of Magento 2 that can ease that process, right? So you need to be kind of starting there. Think about that. Come up with your plan. Work with a partner on that longer term kind of roadmap, right? Because it's not just about moving to a new platform, right? That's like the first step. Then how do you support that? How do you grow the business and take it from there? So, if you haven't already, definitely start having those conversations today, right? So that you're not going to be out there on the Magento 1 platform without any sort of support for any longer than you have to be, right? Again, your site won't shut down, still, run your business, but you need to have a plan. You need to be acting on it.
Yeah, that's great information. So I think that's a great way to wrap up sort of that topic for Magento 1. And again, if you have any other questions about the Magento 1 shutdown, feel free to reach out to anyone here at Swarming, and we'll help you out.